please allow me to sort of say a little bit about uh, the sort of general lay of land of nuclear power. So to give a general sense of where we are with nuclear power, um, it bears remembering that most of the reactors around the world were constructed more than 3 decades ago. So the vast majority of the plants were built before the mid 1980s. The maximum construction rate, the rate at which reactors were added to the grid, were in 1984 and 1985. And then since after that, the rate of constructions and additions to the grid slowed down tremendously. You can kind of date that to the Chernobyl accident, which happened in 1986, but that was by no means the only reason. A lot of it has to do with the economics of nuclear power. And the other thing to note is that since then, there have been also many, many years when more reactors have been shut down or taken off the grid than added to the grid. The other thing to note about nuclear reactor construction is that construction is a very long process with a lot of uncertainty. This map here, this graph here, shows the time it took reactors to be constructed, going from the point where concrete is being poured into the ground to the point when the reactor starts supplying power to the electricity grid. And that those numbers vary quite a lot, but the average is roughly around 10 years. And that's the period between when concrete is poured into the ground to the point where electricity starts being given to the grid. Now, you cannot start construction overnight. You have to go through the environmental clearance process, go through the safety regulation processes, find a community that is willing to live near this risky site, and most importantly, raise the tens of billions of dollars that is required to build a plant. And so, any locality which is going to start on nuclear power construction should expect to take 15 to 20 years before the first power sort of flows in. The important parameter here is the cost. That's something which I think others are going to talk about as well, but I'll just very briefly say that in all of the recent constructions, we've seen that the cost of these reactors have been extremely high. The case in the United States is that of Vogtle, which ran to about 36 or $37 billion, and we're still counting. That number was up from around $14 billion when the construction started. That was the cost estimate when construction started. And that 14 billion itself was up from about $5 to $6 billion, which was the number that Westinghouse and other nuclear power advocates were citing in the first decade of the century, around the time when the Energy Policy Act was passed, and there was a lot of incentives put in place for utilities. So on paper, nuclear reactors might seem very cheap, but in an actual fact, they tend to be extremely expensive. The result of the high cost and the time means that the share of nuclear electricity has been declining consistently. So the global share of electricity produced by nuclear reactors around the world is just over 9%, down from about 17.5% in 1996. In contrast, renewables have been going up very rapidly. So the question that often comes up is, can new nuclear reactor designs, in particular the so-called small modular reactor designs, change these trends? And we are often subjected to a lot of propaganda, that's what I would call it, about how these are going to solve all the problems. But this is something which I've looked at for a long time, and what I'd like to make 2 or 3 points about it. One is that all of the desirable properties for a nuclear reactor, low cost, safe operations, the reduction in the production of radioactive waste, and linkage with nuclear weapons proliferation, all of them cannot be met by a single design. Each design will be able to only optimize one of them. And therefore, you're not going to have all of these problems. In particular, the cost of small modular reactors is going to be higher than large reactors on a per unit basis, on a per megawatt or a per megawatt hour basis, simply because you lose out on economies of scale. And this is something which we can see in the case of the proposed or under construction small modular reactor projects around the world in Argentina and also the new scale project that was proposed for in Idaho, which was canceled in 2023. And there's a same pattern of delays as well with small modular reactor construction. Just want to say that there are a number of reasons why we shouldn't be expanding nuclear power to solve climate change. There are a bunch of undesirable properties, which I've sort of briefly mentioned about accidents and radioactive waste and so on, as well as the high costs and the long timelines. Thank you very much.